So, I've just finished The Last of Us Part 2, and I did want to, and still do, want to work on a video which will, in depth, go in, analyse the game, break it apart, and talk about my thoughts on the game from a more sort of structured point of view. And I do want to do that, but after finishing, I just need to sit down, turn the mic on, and talk about this game. I understand why it's very divisive, and before we get into things, spoiler warning, I'm going to be talking full spoilers here, so if you haven't finished the game, leave, because I'm going to spoil the game. This game is incredibly divisive, and I understand why. I very much understand why, and I want to say first of all that from the marketing material for this game, it's very strange to me the way that they marketed this game. I understand why they did it, but I don't understand particular things. So just to break this down, I understand why they showed older Joel and Ellie in the trailers rather than what they were in the game, which was flashbacks, purely because they wanted to show Joel's presence in this game and Joel's importance to this game, obviously without ruining that he dies, which, you know, you can't do if you don't show him at all. So they wanted to show that Joel has importance without showing that he dies, and I understand that it's a tricky thing to do. The one scene that I do think is strange from the trailers is the famous, incredible moment in the trailers that everyone was super hyped about originally when the trailer first came out, which was Joel's first reveal in The Last of Us Part 2, which in the game, it was really weird, and you find out Joel obviously isn't there because he can't be, and it's just Jesse, but he says the same line. It was strange, and it's odd to me that what they did was they got Troy Baker to come in mocap and voice a line in a scene that isn't part of the game, knowing that it's not part of the game, to mislead us. And the intention there, of course, I mean, a lot of people obviously are very angry and saying that Naughty Dog did it on purpose. They wanted us to buy this game, and then they wanted to betray the fact. Obviously, they didn't want to do that. Obviously, that wasn't their intention. It was just a mistake, which I believe it was. I think their intention was to obviously mislead us in terms of Joel, not knowing that Joel dies. So when it happens, it's impactful, it's a surprise. That's what they wanted to do, but I think they took it a bit too far with that particular scene, in which, you know, they shouldn't have had that at all, because it was an incredibly fantastic moment in the trailer that we realise isn't actually part of the game, and it's very lackluster in the game. And yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. The marketing was weird, and that, honestly, that's my biggest criticism of this game. And I wanted to open with that because it is my biggest criticism, and it's just the fact that I think they went too far in trying to hide major plot points, to which point they actually created major plot points that don't exist. And that's my major issue, is hiding plot points is very different than fabricating ones that people are very hyped about. That's my issue here. With the marketing, and some people might agree, some people might disagree with that, and might, you know, people might agree and take it further than that and think that ruins the game entirely. And this game is very divisive, like I said. But let's start things off by saying, what do I think of the game? Did I like the game? Did I dislike the game? I loved the game, and I know that might be wrong to say, that might be very controversial. But I didn't look at any of the leaks. I've not really been looking at people's general opinions until now. I finished it up and discussing it on Discord to sort of talk things through with people. And people have very different points of view on certain aspects, and it's very divisive, and I understand why, and I think it was intentionally done so. Because clearly this is the story they wanted to tell. It's not the you know, the safe story to tell. You know, they didn't do this because they wanted to make anybody angry. They did this because they wanted to tell the story. If they wanted to make the game that would have been so easy to make, would have been the cliche Hollywood sequel, they could have done another game with Joel and Ellie, going on another adventure, you know, enriching their relationship together. They very much could have done that. And we get moments of that in this game. Don't get me wrong, I love those moments in this game where they do that. But it's always behind what is The Last of Us, and that's that moral ambiguity and the questioning of someone's humanity, and that's very much the theme of this game. The theme of this game is very much the same theme as the first game, which is humanity and the way that people react and the decisions you make when presented with information, and, you know, questioning your own and others' humanity. And that's a very key element to this game, and I absolutely love that because it continues that theme of the first game. At the end of the first game, we're supposed to be conflicted. We're supposed to be almost in Ellie's position, where we know, because we've spent the entire game with these two characters, that Joel had to save her for his own sanity, for his own emotional stability, he had to save her. However, we can take a step back and look at this from another angle, which is that slaughtering an entire building of innocent people, maybe innocent, maybe not innocent people, but slaughtering an entire building of people that, haven't even attacked you, that are just doing their job, and people that want to try and save the world, knowing that there's this, moral dilemma of, killing a 14-year-old girl. What Joel did isn't by any means heroic. He's very much an anti-hero. It's very much a question of, was this the right thing to do? Narrative-wise and theme-wise, yes it was, and I agree that Joel should have done what he did from a narrative perspective. From a moral perspective, that's a different conversation entirely, and they throw that in the air at the end of The Last of Us, and that's where they end that story, which is, over the course of the game, this relationship we've built up between Joel and Ellie is then, in an instant, in a moment, that Joel does what he does out of love, ruins their relationship, breaks it apart, breaks it down, has Ellie for the rest of, the next few years second-guessing herself, questioning Joel, not being able to trust him, and it ruins their relationship. We see that in The Last of Us Part 2, and that's always what I thought would happen after The Last of Us Part 1. So you get this story, which is very much a story of growth, companionship, Joel overcoming these things, and we get to that climax once we get to Salt Lake City at the end of the first game, and that is probably the highest point, the happiest point in the game. But then it immediately comes right back down again. And that's the point. It ends on a low point. That's what The Last of Us does. It doesn't end happily. The Last of Us isn't a happy ending. It's an awful, bittersweet ending where you've built up all this relationship, but then it's been torn down and pulled away from you, and then the game ends and the credits roll. Now, this game, builds on that, and the central focus of this game is the relationship between Joel and Ellie, and I believe that wholeheartedly. I believe that that's the driving force of this game, is the relationship between Joel and Ellie, what that did to Ellie moving forwards, and the way that pushes her through the journey of this game. Obviously, let's talk about plot point number 1, right? Joel's death. That will be the immediate turn-off for a lot of people. Is a lot of people, wanted this game to be the game that they wanted, which was the Hollywood sequel, which was, Joel and Ellie go on another adventure together, and there's some ups and downs, but then they overcome it, right? And that's never what The Last of Us was. I think people tend to remember the happy moments from The Last of Us, and they remember Joel and Ellie together, but they forget that game ended on a very bleak note. And so this game, continues that. It's a shock. It comes out of nowhere. And it was emotionally, it ruined me. Like, I couldn't play the game for another 24 hours. I had to put the game down. I had to step away. I spoke to people about it that were at the same point for fucking hours, and then I came back to the game the next day because I could not continue after that point. It absolutely ripped my heart out, and that was the intention, that was the point. It wants you behind Ellie, right, at this point, because how do you make a compelling revenge story? Well, they could have killed Dina, right? That would have been, somewhat compelling, because you would have believed Ellie's emotions, you would have felt that relationship, it would have pushed you forward for sure. But killing Joel, that's another level. That is a revenge story, a perfect revenge story. You want to follow through with this, you want to follow Ellie, and you want to kill these fucking people, right? But then, what does Neil Druckmann do? And this is where I think for a lot of people it falls apart, and I can understand that, because, so let's cut to the chase here. So you go through all of these moments with Ellie, and obviously when I break down the game properly, I'll break it down way more than this, but you go through all these moments with Ellie where there's a lot of tense moments. You're hunting down these different people, you're looking for Leah, then you're looking for Nora. Ellie does some really fucked up shit. Absolutely fucking, fucks up Nora to get the information she needs. You can see that it affects her. You can see that it really fucks her up, and I love that as well. But then on top of that, moving forwards, you've got, obviously, Ellie doing some more fucked up shit that knowingly she didn't do, right? Like, she kills Owen, she kills Mel, who was pregnant, but doesn't know she was pregnant. That freaks her out even more, and it's this moral dilemma of, we forgive Ellie for that, because we know Ellie, and we're with Ellie, so even though that is awful, and it was a mistake, and it was, circumstantial, she killed a pregnant woman, and, therefore also killed the baby as well, and that's fucked. But because we're with Ellie, and we know Ellie, and we trust her, and we know her morality, we forgive her for that. I think most players probably did. However, what we don't do is forgive Abby for killing Joel. And so what the game tries to get us to do is, I don't think I think a lot of people went into this because at this point, after day 3 with Ellie, we switch over to play as Abby and show her perspective. And I think for a lot of people at this point, they didn't want to. They didn't want to play as Abby. They didn't want to like her. They wanted to just kill her. They just wanted that simple revenge story. And so did I think, for the most part, for the beginning of that. When it puts you into the flashback and you're playing as Abby and you basically see the Salt Lake St. Mary's Hospital massacre from her perspective, and her dad dies, and you see Marlene's moral dilemma that she doesn't want to kill Ellie, but she has to then she goes with it because she has to put her feelings aside to make this cure so that so many people could be saved. And then she goes to tell Joel out of respect for Joel, and that leads to her death. And it adds a lot more complexity to Marlene's decision in that moment, and you realize she's not just a villain, she's not just a bad person. She wants to do the right thing, she has empathy, but, it's different perspectives, and that's sort of what this game does. And at that moment, I was into it. I was like, this is so fucked. Like, I get it now. Like, you get to know Abby and her dad, and you get to know that Abby's dad was a good guy, a really good guy that just wanted to do the right thing, and even to him, this was a moral dilemma. He didn't know how to do it, but he knew he had to do it, and unfortunately Ellie had to die, and Joel kills him. And from obviously Joel's perspective, that was the right thing to do. He had to kill him, he had to save Ellie, it's what he had to do. But then when you look at it from the other perspective, this man has just murdered this entire base of people, this entire hospital, and Abby's dad is dead, and so it makes sense that Abby wants to kill Joel. And at this point, I was still against her. Like, I obviously wasn't with her after just seeing this flashback. I wasn't like, yeah, you know what, Joel should have died. Yeah, I'm fully on board with that. I'm like, this is fucked, because you realize that you're not just killing these mindless NPCs in The Last of Us. They're all people, and they're all people that have families and have kids or have parents, and so they throw in that moral dilemma again, that questioning of humanity and what is the right and wrong decisions morally. And so when you find that out, you realize, oh, this is so fucked. Like, we get why Abby killed Joel. We still wish it hadn't happened, but we get it, and that then sets in stone us moving forward then playing as Abby. Because what they then do is they're like, okay, you understand her backstory, you understand why she did it, but we want you to emotionally connect with this character, and we want you to go through that journey with her. And I think a lot of people, myself included, when it comes up Seattle day 1 and we start playing as Abby, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, fuck this, I don't want this. But I pushed through, kept going, and I liked it. I started to like it. I think, don't get me wrong, I think this game, I don't think it's perfectly paced, right? I think there's some pacing issues. I mean, I think the first game had some pacing issues too, but I think this game does have some pacing issues. I think it puts on the brakes a bit too hard once you finish day 3 with Ellie. I think it goes from 100 to 0 real quick. It's like all of a sudden just brakes on, let's start again, basically. But once you're into that, and you get into the, day 1 with Abby, you play it, and you get to know these other characters, I feel like you then get into it. It's difficult to say, because it feels like 2 games in one, almost. It feels like you have the Ellie game, you have the Abby game, and they then come together at the end to give you this sort of the message of the game. What is the game trying to say as a piece? And I think maybe part of it gets lost in translation. I'm not going to argue this game's perfect, because it's not. I think what it tries to do is incredibly ambitious, and I think it sticks the landing. I just think the way that it gets there maybe is a little bit muddied. Maybe it's a bit off. I think there's definitely some issues with pacing, but they sort of had to, in order to give you both sides of the story so that the ending could work. And I think the ending works because of the build-up and because of the backstory that they give you with both Ellie and Abby's sides to this story. Now, the way that they handled this is, I really liked the sections with Abby. I think day 2 was really fun. I really like the relationship with Yara and Lev. I think those are 2 really great characters, and I really like that Abby's journey almost mirrors that of Joel's journey. Is when we meet Joel in the first game, we know that he's had a bad past, but we don't see that past. We see him from Ellie's perspective, and he grows with her to become a better person and move past his past, which was incredibly shady. We see parts of that come back, like with the interrogation scene and with the final scene where he murders everybody in the hospital, but we see that he's grown and that he's a good person. He's trying to do the right thing, in a bad way, in the wrong way. He's trying to do a good thing, and he's trying to be a good person. And there's a lot of, there's like morally greyness to both Last of Us games, and we see that Abby's journey is somewhat similar, even to the point where at the end of the game, when we get to this sort of, I guess, epilogue chapter, Abby has come to know this kid in Lev, and they've formed a bond, and they've traveled across the country from Seattle to Santa Barbara to find the Fireflies, the same way that Joel and Ellie did in the first game, and I absolutely love that. I love that parallel there, and you get to learn over the course of this game that Abby, she's not a bad person. She's done bad things, but she's not a bad person, and it's the same with Joel. And I know people don't want to hear that. I know people are going to be mad at me for relating the two together, but Abby and Joel are the same in that way, and they try to make all those parallels. That Joel is not a good person. Anyone that tries to argue that Joel is the hero of the game is wrong. He's not a hero at all. He's an anti-hero at best. But Joel is a bad person. He's killed innocents. He was a hunter. When you get that scene in Pittsburgh where you get ambushed by the hunters, and Joel's like, he ain't even hurt, and he knows that because he's been on both sides of this. He's killed innocent people. He's done bad things, and we know that about him. He's not a good person. He is a good person. At heart, he's a good person, but he's done bad things. We also see that with Ellie. We know Ellie's a good person. We know she has a good heart, but she's done bad things. Like all the people we see her kill in this game. She's done bad things. And when we play as Abby, she's done bad things. She's killed Joel, the character that we love. She's taken him away from Ellie, and that's bad. Her father wouldn't have wanted that, not at all, but she wanted revenge the same way Ellie does for Joel. And Abby, we see, is a good person. She wants to be a good person. She helps, Lev. She didn't have to. She helps Yara. She didn't have to. She turns on her own people, who she realizes they're just in this endless, mindless war with these people that are just people that believe differently. Sure, they have some fucked up things, like they're fucking, they're very religious and whatnot, so they obviously were against Lev because of Lev's, mentality and where he's at and all of that stuff, obviously. So they're not good guys, but the point is, not everybody that is with that group are bad, and it's the same with the wolves, and she sees that, and that's why she leaves, and she wants to just help people and do the right thing rather than fighting for a cause that she doesn't necessarily believe in, the same as what Owen says. And I think that's integral to making us relate to this character. And you see, they don't just try to make you relate to the person who killed Joel. They try to redeem her, they try to grow her as a person, and over the course of the 3 chapters that we play as Abby, we see her go from, what we see from Ellie's perspective to somebody that wants to do right, and the reason she helps Lev, and the reason she helps Yara, and the reason she goes back for them, and the reason she does what she does is because I believe she feels regret for what she did to Joel. And she feels regret for the things that she's done, and so she wants to make up for that. She wants to do right, and she wants to move on, and that's where the story takes us. I love the flashbacks with Abby and her relationship with Owen. I love those little moments, and I noticed that a lot of Abby's sections are very much more in the same vein, tone, and vibe as the original Last of Us game, whereas the Ellie sections are entirely different. They're bleak, they're dark, they're sad, they're aggressive. It's tough to play at times, but when you're playing as Abby, I feel that those sections are a lot more grounded in The Last of Us 1. A lot of it is brighter. You get these colourful sunsets and things. There's that companionship between Abby and Lev. You get that. There's the exploration, that voyage from one place to another place. It's very The Last of Us 1 in that sense, and it's very all about growth and humanity. And I very much liked that. When it takes us to the end, however, so we get also, can I just talk about that set piece on the island where you're going through the burning villages, you've got the horse, and that was fucking incredible. But I think that's everything I have to say with regards to the Abby sections. I don't know if there's any much more I could go into in detail, just to say that I like it, and those are the reasons that I like it. Again, like I obviously I think they put on the brakes maybe a bit too abruptly, potentially, but I think maybe that's almost the point. I don't think you're meant to go into the Abby sections like, oh, I'm interested. I think you're meant to go in like, oh my god, fuck this. Like, I can't believe they've fucking done this. But then they bring you around to it, if you're open to that. But I think a lot of people went into this game with, intention to hate it or intention to dislike those moments. I'm not saying everybody at all, but I'm saying a lot of people I think weren't open to the idea of it, and in which case they just went in with, no, I hate the idea of it, and so I hate this. Whereas I didn't. I hated it when it first presented itself, when it goes Seattle Day 1, and then you're playing as Abby. I was like, oh, fuck this. But I was like, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to see if they can get me to like it. And they did. And I think it really brings us round to the point of this game, which is that it's not actually a revenge story. Well, I mean, it is, but it's not, right? The same way that The Last of Us 1, sure, it's a journey. It's getting from A to B. It's getting from Boston all the way to Salt Lake City and getting Ellie to the hospital. That's the game, right? That's the story of the game, and it's not an interesting story. The complexity and the enjoyment and the investment comes from character, their growth, their motivation, their decisions, their morality, and that's what it comes from at the end of the day. The enjoyment of The Last of Us isn't journeying from Boston to Salt Lake City and getting Ellie and like seeing if they'll make a cure. That's not what's enjoyable about the game. The enjoyment does not come from the narrative. It's difficult to explain. I don't mean it doesn't come from the narrative, because of course it does, but it doesn't come from the plot. It comes from character growth, character development, and the questioning of morality and humanity, and that's where The Last of Us is the strongest, and I think the same comes from The Last of Us 2. It's a very compelling revenge story, but the enjoyment and the game's central focus isn't a revenge story. The central focus is perspective, morality, and humanity, the same as the first game. But what this really leans into is the perspective of, you know, if you see events from one perspective, it's totally different than if you see events from another perspective. And that's really what this game tries to nail, and I think that it does. And what it really does is when you're into this final section and you see Ellie is, you know, happy from the start. You see she's happy, she's with Dina. They've got their son, JJ, who is obviously Jesse's son, and Dina's son, obviously. And they've got this farmhouse that Dina was talking about over the course of the game, and honestly at that point I thought the game's over here, like this is the end of the game shit. But of course no, it's not. There's still quite a bit to go, and you know, you've got all of these moments, and then you've got the moment where Ellie's PTSD hits her, and you get to see really, you know, how this has badly affected her, and she still thinks about it. You know, she can't sleep, she's still thinking about Joel, she's still thinking about Abby, even though, you know, Abby let them go. And also, actually, let's go back and talk about this, right? This is something that I want to talk about. So I've seen a lot of people say that Abby is bad because she's just sort of evil, like she takes pleasure in murder and all of this stuff, which is wrong. That's completely wrong. She doesn't at all. A lot of people have quoted the scene where she's going to kill Dina, knowing she's pregnant, because Ellie's like, she's pregnant, don't kill her, and she's like, good, and like she's gonna cut her throat, and Lev has to stop her. Now, that's not Abby loving killing pregnant women, obviously. It's nuanced. The point is, Abby wants more than anything right now to get revenge on the person that killed her friends. She believes that, because let's look at this from Abby's perspective, Joel killed her dad, this man killed her dad, and now that this man's daughter, in quotes, obviously not, but, you know, this man's daughter has now murdered the man that she loved, Owen, and his, I guess, wife. They're not married, are they? I don't know. But has also killed Mel, who's pregnant, in cold blood. That's what she believes. That Ellie has come in, killed Nora, killed Mel, and killed Owen, and killed Mel knowing she was pregnant. That Ellie is just a blood-lusting maniac. That's what she believes. And at this point, Abby is so furious, so heartbroken, so angry that she is willing to kill Dina knowing that she's pregnant. And I believe Abby would have regretted that later. After she'd done it, she would have been like, how can I have done this? But in the moment, that's all she fucking wants, because she's furious that this happened and she just wants to get back at Ellie, and she regrets letting her go and showing that compassion despite having killed Joel. And so in that moment, and I have to say I didn't like the Ellie boss battle a great deal. Because although at that point I'd come to like Abby, I hadn't come to hate Ellie, and so I was like, I don't like that I'm attacking her. This feels wrong, and I didn't like. But everything else I very much did in terms of the story and things like that. But let's get back to Ellie's PTSD that we see. You've got her in this farmhouse and everything. She's still thinking about Joel, and that's when we get the next scene where Tommy's shown up, and he brings the map and everything, and he's like, oh, here we go, so we found her. And that's when, Ellie realizes what's going on, and she can't put it to rest. She wants to, for Dina, and she wants to move on, but she can't. And we see this dilemma of, do I prioritize the people that I care about, or do I go after this revenge? And in that moment, as I think as a player, we're meant to be with Ellie at that point. We're meant to want this revenge more than anything, still, because they remind us as well in that moment why Ellie wants this revenge. We're reminded in that moment because it gives us that flashback again to the very beginning, before any of this fucking happened. Right to the beginning, the thing they were talking about, which was the kiss between Dina and Ellie, which we saw in that E3 demo ages and ages ago. And you get that scene where Joel comes out to defend Ellie against that guy who's being homophobic and being a cunt, because Dina and Ellie kissed, and we get to see that moment, and we get reminded of Joel and how much he is he's a human being, and he cares about Ellie, and that he was murdered, and that again pushes us forward. So then we're back with Ellie again, because at that point I was ready to put it to rest. Like, I felt ready to put it to rest because I'd been with Abby all this time. I knew she'd grown, and I knew that this came from a place that was the same as where it came from with Ellie, and I was like, this can't continue because they're just going to end up killing each other. Someone else is going to want to take revenge. It's a fucking mess, and Joel wouldn't want this at all. But then they remind you of Joel. They give you that spark again. They show you that, and immediately you're like, fuck, I'm back with Ellie again. I'm ready to fucking go get this cunt. And so that's when it takes you to Santa Barbara. You have that entire segment where you're exploring that island. I thought that was really great. Some really great gameplay segments. But obviously I'll talk about gameplay more in the proper video that I make. I just wanted to get this out here. And then we also get that moment where Lev and Abby have found, they've found the Fireflies or whatever. And then they're attacked by the Rattlers, which is that group in Santa Barbara, and that's when then we're back with Ellie. We're doing all the bits, we're going through everywhere, and you get that final moment where you finally find her, but she's been strung up on these posts by the sea. So was Lev, and all she wants at that point, all Abby wants at that point, is to get Lev down, to get out of there, because she's got different priorities at this point. This is, she killed Joel, but that's in the past now. I think she regrets that, and she wants to move on. She's found a new purpose, and that's where her head's at now, right? The same as with Joel. He'd done awful, horrible things. He killed so many people trying to save Ellie, and he was in Jackson. He was happy. He wanted to move on from that, put it behind him, and focus on his relationship with Ellie, this town, and being the best person he could be in that position, right? And so did Abby. That's what she wanted, but Ellie wanted to kill her at that point. Like, it's this scene where you see Ellie, she's like, she knows in her head she needs to put this to rest. She needs to put this behind her. She needs to move on, and it's wrong to do, because I think she can see the parallels between Abby and Joel, and between herself and Lev, and so she goes to the boat. But then when she sees the blood on her hand and sees that vision again of Joel lying there dead, that she just wants to fucking kill Abby, and she goes for it. And that's the last image she has in her head of Joel, is that image of him dead, just lying there in his own blood. And it pushes the fight forward, and you see these two that we've got to know incredibly well, locked into this fight. And Ellie does some fucked shit. Like, she's like, you have to fight me or I'm gonna kill this kid. And it's this perfect fucking parallel between the first game and this game, right? Ellie at this point, right now, is Abby's dad. Abby is Joel, Lev is Ellie, and Ellie is Abby's dad. That's what we've got now in this final scene. Ellie is gonna kill this person that Abby has come to love, and Abby has to fight to save this person. And oh my god, and what it does is it opens up to Ellie this entire thing and what's happened and all of this, and it's come full circle, and you have this fight, and it's an incredibly wonderful set piece. They're really fucking each other up. It's brutal, it's incredible, and it ends with Ellie, obviously she loses her fingers because Abby bites them off, and then she's trying to drown her, and she can't do it, and what we see is this image, this flash in her head of Joel sitting on the porch, and she can't do it, and she lets her go, and it's like, that's it. The cycle is finished, because if she'd have killed Abby, Lev probably would have come back and killed her, and it's this cycle that needs to end, and she does right by her surrogate father in the end, which is to end this cycle of killing and revenge and put it to rest and end it, and it's a beautiful scene, and she sits there, and she's devastated, and she's broken, and Abby leaves, and Ellie just sits there in the water, and we get this shot from behind her, and it's absolutely incredible. And the final scene we get is classic The Last of Us, fucking heartbreaking, is we get this moment, but also not just heartbreaking, it's bittersweet, and that is The Last of Us in a nutshell. We get this moment where Ellie returns home. Dina's not there, JJ's not there, obviously. I would think Dina's gone back to Jackson, and so you go in, and she picks up the guitar, and now she can't play anymore, and it's so heart-wrenching, because it's the last thing she has left of Joel, and it's gone now because she can't play that song anymore. She will never ever be able to play that song again in future days, because she can't do it, because she doesn't have the fingers to play the guitar anymore, and it's that final memory she has of what was her father, and as she tries to play it, and the notes, it's all out of tune, and she can't play the song. Oh, it's heartbreaking, and you realize that all of this, what it led to was just more loss, and she has this flashback again to the final conversation they would have had together before he died, which is the bittersweet ending to all of this, which is, we thought they ended on either the note of, I'm never talking to you again, which was in that flashback at the St. Mary's Hospital, or it was that flashback where then later on, then when Joel defends her, and she's like, I don't need your help, get out of here, and he's like, okay, alright, and then he leaves. But the final scene, the final thing we see, the final conversation, which actually leads to, why Ellie ended up sparing Abby, because she remembers Joel, is that she forgives Joel for what he did, for killing those people in the hospital, for taking that choice away from her. She says, I don't think I can ever forgive you, but I want to try. And that means so much to Joel, and you can see he tears up as she walks away, and he's content. He's like, finally I can have her back. And he even says in that scene, like, if I could do it again, I would do it exactly the same way, because he cares so much about her, and that's very Joel. It's so true to his character, and you see this, Ellie finally wanting to forgive this man, and they could have had so much more time together if they rekindled that relationship that they had, and it's so bittersweet because they didn't get that, but the last thing they got was Ellie saying she wants to forgive him, and that's the last thing that that's the last conversation he had with her, and so that also then links to Ellie forgiving and letting Abby go, because she can't forgive her for killing Joel, but she wants to try, because that's all she can do moving forward. And I think it's such an incredibly bittersweet, heartbreaking, incredible story about humanity, forgiveness, perspective. It's so good. I think it's a beautiful game. I think it's definitely a risky game. It's definitely divisive. It's polarizing. But the one thing it's not is safe. It's not Hollywood, and it is so very much The Last of Us, and I adore that about it. I know the comments to this video are going to be a fucking battleground, but I really, really hope that we can maybe get some good discussions, and I really hope people aren't too angry at me over this, but those are my thoughts, and of course, I'm going to come out with a proper, in-depth video analysing this game soon. Hopefully, I'm going to try my best, but this might be something that will take a while to make, because I really want to do the game justice. But personally, I absolutely loved the game, I loved the message, and I really, really loved the ending. A lot of people have been saying that it looks like they might jump in and do a part 3 based on where they left things off, purely because it feels almost unresolved. But I feel that's sort of The Last of Us, and to me, I think this is a 2-part story, and it's sort of like, you know, everything's come back around, and we've sort of learned this tragic lesson, you know, the moral of the story, and this very introspective narrative about humanity, who we are, and both games, I think, do that very, very, very well, and I just think it's fucking incredible. I really do. I think it's fucking incredible. It's ambitious, and I think they nailed it. And that's my honest opinion on this game. And also, just to quickly go over some gameplay stuff, it's also the highest quality game I've ever played from a gameplay perspective. Visually stunning. The way that it plays, the polish, the detail in every single fucking thing. Oh my god, it's incredible. And can we just talk about the fact that Naughty Dog wrote in that they made us, you know, mindlessly kill a dog character as Ellie, and then they make us bond with the dog character and feel so sad when we realize that that's the dog we fucking killed. Oh my god, I was so anxious when Abby re-enters the fucking aquarium and we see Alice dead. I was like, oh no, this is awful. It was so bad, but yeah, it's honestly, I think it's an incredible experience. I think it's a game that will age very, very well. I think that once everyone settles the fuck down, it might be a game that people look back on and love a lot more. I understand it's very divisive. I get that 100%. If you don't like the game, I can understand why you wouldn't like the game. But I love the game, and that's where I'm at with it so far. I'm sorry this was so long and so rambly, but hopefully, you know, you had a good time listening to it. You know, you can just throw this on in the background, almost like a podcast sort of thing. But that is it from me. I will have the video out soon, hopefully, to break this down properly. But that is it for now. Alright, thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that stuff. Patreon's been doing absolute bits, and it's crazy to see the growth over there. So if you haven't already, go check it out. Maybe that'll be pretty cool. But thank you to everybody that's supporting me over there. It really, really does help out with the channel, and I should be back with some more shit soon, especially streams and that. So go subscribe to Lasers Live, link down below if you haven't already, because I'm gonna be streaming some more soon, starting Final Fantasy VII Remake finally. It's long awaited, but I'm gonna be starting that soon. So there we go. All right, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for joining. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you all later on. Goodbye.